There's a large percentage of people who basically are just trying to afford to live. 1/4 of Canadians have food insecurity right now. That's not good. 40 million plus Americans are now losing their SNAP benefits. A lot of those were working class Americans. This is a crisis. We have entered a crisis, and the sales pitch still coming from the right is that they care about you. They want you to have freedom by vilifying other people who are suffering.
The 90s are back, baby. Zellers, Jenko jeans, people treating stuffed animals like crypto, and of course the threat of Canada being torn apart like a pair of knockoff Jenko jeans. But this time, it's Alberta threatening to leave the country. That's right, separation. It's not just for sad dads or Quebec anymore. And thanks to a fun new law passed by Alberta Premier Danielle Smith, it's easier than ever to force a referendum and turn Alberta into its very own landlocked petrostate. And this new Alberta is gonna be awesome. Masty.
Yeah, for worldwide viewers from other parts of the world, US, Europe, Brazil, wherever you're watching this show right now, if you didn't know, there's a growing and very loud and angry separatist movement in Alberta. They want to take their country back, as in just form a new country. I think it's finally evolved from being a US 51st state situation into they want just Alberta to be Alberta the country. It's you know, going to be plumb in the middle of Canada. I mean, you know, on the left side, but still, it'll be a little awkward for the rest of the country to have to jump over that giant amount of land to get through. It turns out the majority of the separatist movement is being funded by US-backed agencies in order to want to secure, you'll never guess this, Alberta's oil.
Deportations,
and Carla's Wild Ride, thanks for being the first sub of November. Nice to see you.
Funding First Nations, and so much oil and gas extraction that Alberta literally becomes the pollution capital of the world. It's all right here in this 50-page blueprint. I forgot the blueprint. Howdy. It's all right here in this 40-page blueprint from Alberta's largest separatist organization. And the best part, they already got Trump on board. It is about to get real. So for the sake of national unity, let's find out what these separatists really want and see if we can't come to some common ground as Canadians. Hi to my Aunt Darlene, Uncle Rocco, all my cousins, and everyone else in Alberta. I'm Aaron Hagen McKay, and welcome to The Goose.
Now, if you're an American watching, you're like, what's with the whole cowboy aesthetic? I thought that was our thing. It's also Alberta's thing, okay? Alberta loves the whole cowboy stuff. They're obsessed with it, actually. It's a huge thing there. And you'll even go to, like, some festivals, you know, in Alberta or near Alberta. You can go to the Merritt Music Mountain Festival, and you'll see Confederate flags, which is also very strange, because, you know. Ooh, secret third thing.
Today I come to you in the traditional dress of our people whenever a dorky Toronto man wants to appeal to Albertans, because we need to talk about Alberta separatism. Recent polls show only 20% of Albertans say they would definitely vote for Alberta separation, compared to over 50% who say they would definitely vote to stay, which sounds like a referendum is doomed to fail. Meanwhile, the separatist Alberta Republican Party can't even come second in an election. Also, Alberta is on treaty land, signed with the Crown of Canada, not Alberta, because here in Canada, law comes from a magic hat. So, is this issue being blown out of proportion? No. Dismiss Alberta separatism at your own peril, JJ McCullough. Sure, Alberta separatism has no distinct culture like Quebec, the Basque.
That one might be weird too to people who don't know. JJ McCullough is actually conservative. I know a lot of people in America play his videos and I think he's delightful because he says a boot. And it's just like, well, he's just like a silly Canadian who explains Canada to me as a non-Canadian. And that's what I like him for. And you'll notice this about JJ McCullough. He hates the French. boy, does he ever hate the French. He just like despises them. He despises the fact that like the country's bilingual. He hates Quebec. He doesn't, I think, want the province to exist. And he's making video after video about how angry he is that Quebec has all these extra rights and how they want to separate and how we should all be scared of them and how we should destroy the French and we need to wage war on the French. All this stuff. Really hates the French. I don't know where his hatred of French and French people comes from, but you will not meet a man who has more hatred for the French than J.J. McCullough. But he doesn't seem at all concerned with the Alberta separatist movement. In fact, he often talks about it in a kind of a freedom-y way. As in, I mean, like, anyone who wants liberation and freedom should seek it, shouldn't they? It might be because J.J. McCullough also loves America. I don't think you'll find a Canadian outside of maybe a handful of, like, you know, some really, really strange folk who love America as much as J.J. loves America. He loves them in almost like a Stockholm Syndrome kind of situation. Like, every single time there's a fight between the U.S. and Canada, he starts going like, leave America alone. We should be grateful to them. They have given us everything. Without them, we are nothing. Like, he is so desperate to basically continue to be a satellite vassal military state for the U.S.
Or the Welsh. But those separatists in Alberta have one thing those losers never had. Oil money, baby! For example, this is the Free Alberta strategy, Alberta's Project 2025, designed to make separation easier in the future by creating Alberta versions of federal programs. It was written by Alberta Premier Danielle Smith's former Chief of Staff Rob Anderson, along with University of Calgary professor Barry Cooper, and some guy named Derek. They want to secure self-determination for the people of Alberta within a reformed confederation, or if necessary, as an independent nation, because Alberta's treatment within Canada has become intolerable. That's why they want to offload the burden of Ottawa's tyrannical economic policies, like the federal carbon tax, the No New Pipelines Act trademark, and attempts by federal agencies to regulate our province's energy sector in any manner. And if it seems like they're weirdly obsessed with hitting climate policies like a political piñata, that may have something to do with the fact that their publisher is the Alberta Institute, a right-wing fossil fuel-funded think tank in the Atlas Network. Atlas as an Atlas shrugged, the only book to create more unfuckable twerps than The Lord of the Rings. The Atlas Network has 11 organizations in Canada. And
I feel personally attacked there. I was just talking about how over the weekend I started rewatching the extended editions of The Lord of the Rings. I don't know why. I got into a real Lord of the Rings rabbit hole. I started watching all these YouTube videos on the extra lore, trying to refresh my memory of some of the stuff that I couldn't totally remember. And I don't speak the languages, because I'm not that hardcore of a nerd. I'm a nerd, but like there's tiers of nerds, right? And then when it comes to Lord of the Rings nerds, there's like the real hardcore ones who are like, oh no, you have to learn Elvish if you really want to understand the books. And you're like, what? And then you have to learn Orc if you really want to understand the books. You have to understand their own language. I mean, that's what Tolkien went through the trouble of doing. He actually gave them their own languages, their own alphabets, all this kind of stuff. And I was like, no. I need to relearn Spanish. I'm trying to learn Machif, a real language, language of my ancestors. I don't have time to learn these fake languages that I'll only be able to communicate with extremely uber nerds with. The only other people I know who will randomly be able to speak the Elvish tongue, right? But sure.
500 worldwide, including the Heritage Foundation, publishers of America's Project 2025, called Project 2025, currently halfway through turning the US into a techno-feudal fascist dystopia, or as they call it, freedom. The Atlas Network is funded by fossil fuel interests like ExxonMobil and everyone's favorite half-alive villain duo, the Koch brothers. And oh boy, does their hatred for climate policy burn like the undying fire of 1,000 suns. And when you know it, the largest oil sands company in Canada is Imperial Oil, majority owned by ExxonMobil. And who refines the bulk of Canada's oil? Koch Industries. Alberta separatism is a US-backed PSYOP for oil. That's it. That's why it's a big deal. Right now, social media.
If you didn't know that's why. Also, you might be wondering how a lot of these freaks have such loud voices and how they're able to actually penetrate in a lot of different areas of the media. They get funding. When we very recently did a Leftist Mafia, and you know, we like to bring on guests every now and then, and we brought on a variety of guests, and sometimes guests like to come there and explain to us that, hey, by the way, what's really important right now is people start funding, you know, left-wing independent media, because the right does that already. They fund the fuck out of it. And that's true. Sometimes that money's wasted. Sometimes it goes towards channels that turn out to be kind of, you know, white supremacist. Sometimes it goes to political parties that turn out to be very white supremacist. So they have a big problem with, you know, usually the people who are climate change deniers align with a lot of other conspiracy theories. You'll get flat earthers, anti-vaxxers, residential school deniers. So you're definitely dabbling in, I would say, quite the swamp when you do this shit. But it is how a lot of this stuff ends up getting a lot more noise and traction than it would otherwise. If you happen to be anywhere in North America right now, because I've noticed American viewers complain about this as well, your YouTube recommendation and the ads sometimes are the most foul shit, stuff that you completely disagree with, and it's almost offensive to see it appearing on your timeline. But then you might be wondering, where the fuck are they getting the money for this? Because it costs a lot of money to run just endless amounts of ads for stuff that people otherwise wouldn't care at all about. Like, why the fuck am I supposed to care about the Alberta separatist movement? I don't live in Alberta. I think it's a terrible idea. It seems to be run by racists. Like, I think the whole thing is pretty clear here. What's going on?
Media is awash with disinformation and conspiracy theories, and honestly, some pretty dope AI slopaganda to manufacture consent for further American control over our resources.
He once gave Donald Trump a tour of his ranch. Now Alberta has a free trade deal and 3 new golf courses.
I paid 50 grand in taxes this year.
And what did Ottawa give you back?
A carbon tax and a lecture on pronouns.
He once left a barbecue early because someone brought Beyond Meat burgers.
They keep bringing in more people than our communities can manage. Crime is rising.
It's kind of just a little too blatant here. You kind of want to probably dial that one back a wee bit. I would choose another prompt. You know, add maybe one white person just to not make it so obvious, because pretty fucking obvious.
It's not the Alberta I grew up in.
We're importing the problems of the third world.
He's never used someone's pronouns and plans to keep it that way.
Ease. Every time. Without fail. I've yet to see like a single right-winger who complains about pronouns be able to speak the English language without using pronouns, because they're quite useful. It's why they exist.
We could lead the world in energy, innovation, and freedom if we had our own country.
He doesn't believe in man-made climate change. He believes in Chinooks, cold snaps, and common sense.
Alberta must become an independent nation. Independence or collapse. The choice is ours.
It really seems like an existential battle for human civilization, which is the way white supremacists always frame this shit, by the way. You'll probably notice this has been fucking Elon Musk's calling card forever now. He loves it, you know? Just, we're gonna have civilizational collapse unless we increase our birth rates. What do you mean by birth rates, Mr. Musk? You'll have to be more specific. Birth of whom?
So is it working? I don't know. Where do you think all these American flags came from? Italy? But you may be wondering, why is this happening now? You may remember just days before Canada's 2025 election, Preston Manning, the Reform Party leader in the 90s, casually lobbed the grenade of Alberta separatism back into the national conversation with an op-ed in the Globe and Mail, warning that electing Mark Carney will bring back the specter of, get this, Alberta separatism. Oh, thanks for the warning there, Preston. You talk to your wife that way? Oh, sorry, hon. If you go on that business trip, we'll bring back the specter of me putting my grade A Alberta beef inside your sister again. Reform! No surprise, Preston Manning has his own Atlas Network think tank, the Canada Strong and Free Network. They hold a huge conference every year, putting a terrible strain on Grindr's servers. They even stream it on Rumble, because of course they do. And oh look, it's Imperial Oil and Coke Industries again. What a coincidence! Around that time, Alberta Premier Daniel Smith, with the subtlety usually reserved for cliche mob goons and bird memes, sent this list of demands that must be met by the next Prime Minister, or else there'll be a national unity crisis. Almost all of the demands were straight from Big Oil's wish list. Then Mark Carney won, and Alberta passed Bill 54 days later, which made it way easier to force a referendum by lowering the signature threshold and increasing the time to gather them. Now you just need 10% of the people who voted in the previous provincial election to sign your Citizens Initiative petition, and baby, you got a referendum stew going.
Now, I think this is all important, just in the key part that I'm going to be talking about today, centered around the fact that all of these people right now, I'd say internationally, who are running fascistic movements, for worse or for worse, they fucking hate you. You being just workers, everyday people. Doesn't matter if you happen to be part of a minority group, obviously then they hate you for who you are and how you were born kind of shit. But they actually just hate workers as well. There's a white supremacist party here in British Columbia. It's called 1BC. And they just released a new video where their new proposal is basically to sign a bill that's going to give workers, employers, the ability to fire you if you're sick. And they're selling it and pitching it as a whole kind of like, well, this is to help small businesses. This is to get rid of all these lazy Gen Zers. It seems like Gen Z is just basically spending all day playing video games, building goon caves. You've read the article, all that kind of stuff. So right now there's just this drain on the economy, and it's really hurting small business owners. And we want to help them out. So to help out small business owners, we want to give you the ability to fire your workers if they want to show up, not show up to work sick. And that's the whole sales pitch. And it couldn't be more transparent that at the end of the day, all these people who spend all day talking about freedom, all these people who spend all day talking about how, like, we want to unify the country, we want to make America great again, we want to make Canada great again, we want to bring Canada back, Canada first, America first, all these kind of slogans, everything from like the Nick Fuenteses all the way to the Alberta Separatist movement, all of it is centered around basically fascistic policies. They're all bought and paid for and funded by oil industry executives, Koch brothers, think tanks, all this kind of shit. This is just big money coming down from corporations trying to, again, put people into positions of power, in the case of the Alberta Separatist movement, and not have everyone realize what they're doing. So they have to pitch the entire thing as this is an existential crisis, an existential battle for freedom. Now, they tailor and custom these kind of messages for different areas. Right now, the same kind of fascistic policies are trying to be enacted in the UK. They're selling the whole thing as a struggle for freedom from what they are saying are these roving rape gangs, right? Like the entire country is being overrun by non-white people who apparently are just like raping everybody. That's what Elon Musk is pitching. That's what Tommy Robinson is pitching. That's what Nigel Farage is pitching. And to a certain extent, it works because they get at the core of what is scaring people, and then they distract them from the people fucking over their lives. Instead of ever actually holding the elites to account, the corporations, the billionaires, all this kind of stuff, they continuously make everybody mad at something they know is going to galvanize them. In the case of Alberta, you got to separate from the country because the federal government hates you, and they're trying to basically put their hands in your pocket. They're trying to destroy what makes Alberta great, which apparently now is oil. That's their identity. And so we need you to separate. So that's what we want to do there. In the UK, the very idea of Britain for the British is being destroyed, civilizational collapse because of all these immigrants that are coming over and sexually assaulting all of the white women. So you got to be really scared. You got to be worried. All the crime and all the stuff that's out of control is 100% because of all the immigrants. This is the fault of the liberals. Stop them. We got to take them down. America, it's already gone far right, so they don't have to work as much on that. They're going to be concentrating on other theaters to continue to push this idea. At its core, it's basically just to consolidate power for billionaires and corporations. That's what it is. That's what it'll always be. Actually, it's one of the reasons why in the United States right now, they're targeting things like SNAP so much, right? Going after SNAP, going after Medicaid, programs that actually help people who can't, make ends meet, even though they're workers. If you look it up, some of the biggest recipients of SNAP funding and Medicaid funding happen to be Amazon and Walmart, because they are not paying their employees enough. There are families that are working 35, 40, in some cases 50 hours a week, and they're unable to afford groceries for their entire family. That should be criminal. That should be something worth investigating. That should be something worth getting mad at. Instead of getting mad at people who basically can't make ends meet, you've got all of these rich right-wingers, Matt Walsh, Jim Poole, etc. They're spending all day now just going after the poor. There was a whole bunch of disgusting-ass Halloween costumes. We'll get into it. All the people doing blackface and thinking, oh, I'm so edgy in 2025. Fucking just ugly people found a way to make themselves even uglier. That's all that is. But outside of the fact that, they're thinking that racism's back and they're able to be as racist as they want, as white supremacists they want, all this kind of stuff, it's all a distraction. Again, it's to make people who already are having a hard time want to fight each other. And as long as they're fighting each other or angry at each other or angry at anything other than the things that are causing the problems in their lives, they continue to grow their power.
But one detail of Bill 54 went underreported. It allowed corporate donations during elections and increased the amount third-party advertisers can spend. Canada's version of super PACs. Because nothing says improving democracy.
Luke Degner, thank you very much for the $10. Sub Right Fight, I'm here for it. Oh, we're going to be getting there. I'm very close to unleashing the Ben Shapiro saga. It's as hilarious as you can imagine.
Democracy, like flooding elections with dark money. Third-party advertisers like Rebel News routinely host Alberta separatists while also selling "I stand with Trump" mugs. Like, this couldn't be any more obvious. Like, why not just sell autographed copies of his letter to Epstein? So who's working on the Alberta separation petition? The Alberta Prosperity Project, or APP. They're Alberta's largest separatist organization, and they say they have over 200,000 people who have already committed to signing their separation petition once it drops. But for people who talk a big game about sovereignty and becoming independent, the Alberta Prosperity Project sure likes to talk about becoming a US state. Like, imagine if Quebec separatists were like this. We have a distinct society and must become independent. But also maybe we join up with Vermont because Bernie has raised Tabernacle. No, it doesn't work that way. Recently, the APP launched their plan for what happens after they win a referendum. But before we dive into that, I need to educate my fellow non-Albertans on why separation might seem like a good idea. Albertans have legitimate grievances against Ottawa, some of which are baked into the fabric of the federal government. But let's be real, the number of people who want to separate because of seats on the Supreme Court or representation in the Senate is exactly zero. This is entirely about he who controls the spice, except with giant trucks instead of sandworms.
He who controls the spice controls the universe.
The original insult from Ottawa started in the 1980s under Prime Minister Pierre Elliott Trudeau, pictured here posing for the father-son issue of Bilingual Vampire. He introduced the National Energy Program, or NEP, an attempt to make Canada energy independent, increase Canadian ownership in the oil sector, and provide people with cheap fuel in the wake of multiple oil crises in the 1970s. But all of that was kind of at odds with oil companies maximizing profits. This was seen as federal overreach and was highly disruptive to Alberta's oil industry. Eventually, the NEP was abandoned, but many Albertans permanently put the Trudeaus in their burn book for trying to make gas cheap, and then 40 years later, for making gas more expensive. Later, free trade agreements like NAFTA geared much of Canada's economy into raw materials for the US, making us super dependent on them while crowding out other industries. Canada is being used as a resource colony, and Alberta is no exception. Oil and gas, mining and quarrying is 25% of Alberta's economy, on par with petrostates like Iran. Practically all of Alberta's oil goes to America. 30% of Alberta's economy is dependent on the US, so it makes sense they'd elect a premier who was a lobbyist for oil and gas companies and can cozy up to Trump. Side note, check out Kevin O'Leary over here looking like Danny DeVito and twins. Honestly, this explains so much. Probably the biggest bone of contention is equalization payments, a federal wealth redistribution system that ensures a consistent level of government services across provinces. Alberta is the largest contributor, due in no small part to its oil and gas industry. Quebec, on the other hand, takes way more in equalization payments, more than all other provinces combined. So for some, it feels like Alberta keeps writing big checks to Ottawa's favorite spoiled child while getting nothing in return. Which is not exactly true. During COVID, with the collapse of oil markets, Alberta received by far the most in emergency benefits per capita. They even got $1 billion to clean up abandoned oil wells, keeping oil and gas workers employed. But still, the argument goes, Alberta would be better off without equalization. So you can see why resentment might build as the rest of Canada acts like, money please!
Give me money. Money me.
Money
now. Me a money needing a lot now.
And then there's the narrative that the federal government is always getting in Alberta's way, which again is just code for getting in the way of the oil and gas industry. They point to the cancellation of the Northern Gateway Pipeline, the consumer carbon tax, the electric vehicle mandate, the tanker ban off the North BC coast, making us all eat bugs for every single meal, and worst of all, the government's environmental assessment law, often called the No More Pipelines Act. A bold choice, considering the government just finished a pipeline to the BC coast that cost taxpayers $34 billion, which we covered in a previous video. And now they're kicking the tires on yet more pipelines, including another one to the BC coast, with Alberta as the proponent. And if we can't get that pipeline done...
This is a Canada project, and this is a
This is what I've said before to the American viewers. This is our Marjorie Taylor Greene, except it's the equivalent of Marjorie Taylor Greene being the governor of a state. She's the premier of a province. She's been an absolute disaster and has still been able to cling to power. It's deeply embarrassing, but it's because they're using a playbook very effectively, and that is to continue to keep people distracted with what they call cultural and social issues, aka targeting vulnerable minorities. What she's been doing very effectively is going after trans people in Alberta, saying that she wants to fix the school system, make sure that she gets pornography out of schools, aka any books that are related to LGBTQ plus people. They started there, and they said that they were doing it for, you know, grades K to 12, kindergarten all the way to grade 12, whereas you can make an argument once you get older and you're a teenager, you should have access to different kind of literature than if you were in kindergarten and you were just learning how to read. But if you say K to 12, it's really effective to have parents be like, oh yes, I don't want this coming of age story that talks about growing up gay to be able to be read by a 5-year-old. Oh, of course not. That would be terrible. Yes. No one's on that side of things. But should we not be able to separate maybe the K to 12 thing? No. Let's just give them what they want. So they do that. They ban all these LGBTQ plus books in the school system. And then surprise, surprise, they start going for other topics. They start going after The Handmaid's Tale. They start going after The Color Purple. Because again, it's much more about indoctrination. It's much more about keeping people continuously distracted with culture war stuff is what they call it, but you're actually talking about other people's civil rights. And at the same time, they're actually being heavily funded by American oil corporations to continue to try and secure the vast amount of resources that are in Alberta for the benefit of America. And obviously energy extraction companies and corporations. I shouldn't say America as the country, because these companies don't really care as much about nationalism or unity as they care about staying rich as fuck and being able to influence domestic politics. It's super fucked up, but it's working, and it needs to be taught and explained more. I'm glad channels like this exist. This is called The Goose. Oh, well, I'll share it either way. For some reason, I'm assigned out of YouTube's. Here's a link to the full video. Go watch it and thumbs up it and help them out. Very good stuff. I am most impressed. Just one little last piece of news from Canada. I don't know how to describe them and not be cruel, so I'll just say odd-looking folk. This on the left is the leader of the white supremacist party of British Columbia, and on the right is a white supremacist, I'll just say commentator, political guy called Wyatt Claypool, who's actually gotten mad at me numerous times for ratioing him on various websites by trying to explain that the Nazis killed the socialists. He's one of those people who believes that because the word socialist is in the name, that implies the Nazis were socialists, and then as soon as you point out, oh, I don't know if you know this, the Nazis killed all the socialists and the communists. I don't know if you've read the poem. They're the first on the list. Maybe you should go back and look at the list, right? Because you're saying nothing. But here in this situation, you know, I think because of that, and I ratioed him so badly just by, I wasn't even going for cruelty. I was just like, they killed all the socialists. That was it. It's just a matter of, you know, historical fact, if you didn't know that. But instead he said I was some far leftist communist journalist or something like that. I was like, no, I'm a clown man on the internet, sir. But either way, here he is interviewing the white supremacist party leader, Dallas Brody. And I'm not going to play the 4 minutes of this because their voices are as grating as you can imagine, maybe worse, so I'll just give you a quick sample.
Claypool, and I am an advisor to the 1BC caucus, and I am joined here with our fantastic 1BC leader,
It's like you're deflating a balloon, right? In the middle of the sentence. Hi there, I'm here alongside a residential school, not denier, I will say reality truth teller, to talk about how our province is falling apart. But what they go on to say is they want to attack a bill called Bill, it's actually Bill 30, they misspelled the number of the bill. In their own post. You can edit posts on Twitter, first, I'll have you know, and secondly, you could delete this and re-upload it, but never mind. Either way, so they say Bill 31, they're actually talking about Bill 30, and what they want to do is effectively make it legal to fire your employees if they are sick. That's what they get to the crux of. If the people who come into the workplace, this is basically just to the benefit of, I'll say, medium-sized business owners and above, but this is what I keep saying, is that everything that all of these fascists, these white supremacists, these right-wingers, conservatives, Republicans, MAGA, all of them, they are all trying to pretend that they are speaking on the behalf of the general public, the working class. You know, we are talking about issues that really concern you and your livelihood. We want to make sure that we take our country back. We need freedom. We need to get rid of the immigrants. They They hate immigrants, by the way. They're talking and trying to promote the idea of this new thing the right are doing called re-immigration, as in we have to get rid of every single person who wasn't actually born in the country, and then if they were born in the country, where were they from originally? Like, is it kind of, let's just say, a certain degree of melanin? And if so, yeah, all right, fine, maybe they can stay, depending on whom, because I gotta be honest, they're not huge fans of the Irish and the Italians, but they're down with some other kinds of whites. That level of racism that we're talking about, racism that goes to such extremes that they have to get racist towards different groups of white people. It's racism within racism, right? Different shades of bigotry. But either way, the fact that they actually want to give bosses the ability to fire you if you're sick, that gives the game away. They don't care about the working class. They don't give two fucks about it. All of them are just heavily funded by all of these rich corporations, all of these think tanks. That's where they're getting all this money. That's why these parties exist in the first place. What the fuck is a white supremacist party doing in the middle of British Columbia? They have such low amounts of support, yet they have enough funding to produce documentaries. They're releasing an entire residential school denial documentary very shortly. There's ads for it on YouTube. I see them all the time. Where do you have the money as a less than 2% polling political party? No one supports you. No one is going fucking for the full-blown fash in this province. And yet you exist and you have enough time and money to produce these massive documentaries, to release the ads on YouTube, to promote them as much as you can, to again pull people in who might be at this point upset because they think like their rights are being taken away somehow by Indigenous people because they convince people with their racism, right? But they hate workers. And honestly, they really are working on the behalf of, again, rich corporations, the billionaire class, and they will do this thinly veiled attempt to say, like, your rights are being taken away, your freedoms are being taken away. We care about freedom. We want to get rid of the immigrants so you can have more freedom. You know, we want to take away all these Indigenous rights so you can have more freedom. Freedom for hardworking white Canadians. White Canadians deserve more. The descendants of Europeans shall rule again. All this kind of shit like that. While at the same time, they hate workers. Like, if you get sick on the job, you get sick on the job. It's bad for the workplace to have workers show up who have colds who can then spread it to other workers. It's a complete myth that there is this surplus of Gen Z employees who are pretending to be sick specifically just so that, like, they don't have to work anymore. They can just go home all day and play video games and build the goon caves. All of that is right-wing claptrap, all right? The problem with both millennials and Gen Z is they were grown up under a lie. They were consistently told if you work hard and you play by the rules, you go and you get a bunch of student debt, you get a high education, you'll be able to enter the workforce, you'll get a high paying job, you'll be able to buy a house, you'll be able to afford a family, and then you can live the Canadian or the American dream, whichever one you want, but you can go do that as long as you do everything right. And then once you actually realize, hey, by the way, I'm swamped in student debt, I owe tens of thousands of dollars to a debt that will be inheritable, by the way, it's going to be passed down to children if I can afford to have them someday. That's really fucked up. But in addition to that, the idea of buying a house in the current system is fucked. It's so fucked. Like, who in their right mind has $150,000 to $200,000 saved, put away to be able to get a down payment loan from a bank? That if they don't have help from their parents, if they don't have help from wealthier relatives, if one of their parents doesn't die, if they don't inherit suddenly a large sum of cash, that dream is now very, very difficult. And you know, we can get into the details of to why the housing crisis is as it is, but clearly there is a consistent push to maintain the housing prices as they are because no one wants to suddenly lose 20% on their home value because they'll lose a lot of money in the process. The home owning class, that is, right? So now we're stuck in this situation. The younger generations can't afford the dream. They can't afford the home. There's a large percentage of people who basically are just trying to afford to live. 1/4 of Canadians have food insecurity right now. That's not good. 40 million plus Americans are now losing their SNAP benefits. A lot of those were working class Americans. This is a crisis. We have entered a crisis, and the sales pitch still coming from the right is that they care about you. They want you to have freedom by vilifying other people who are suffering. Continuously vilifying other people who are having really hard lives. Like, everything I've just said is going to be infinitely more difficult if you happen to be a trans person, infinitely more difficult if you happen to be in a gay marriage, etc., infinitely more difficult if you're an Indigenous person in the country. And yet they don't care about any of these groups. They hate all these people. They just want to keep pushing this idea that we are trying to save you from the perils of immigrants, the perils of these people coming into the country, taking everything, taking our jobs, taking our lives.
Thank you so much to our patrons for making this show possible. We could not fund it without you. And if you want to join, please check out patreon.com/theserfs to unlock bonus episodes, uncensored content, and all the good stuff. Thanks to Anna Loves Riley, Addercap, Bobby Lasers, Cheryl Alvarez, Comrade Junkie, Doug Caddy, Everything Important, Hegbard Salim, Multimondi, Omni, Political Papi, Preston Kroll, Quiet One 85, Riley and Anna, Roller Dragon, Cernicus, Stellar Gwyn, Sebastian Demmel, Tigwick, and Words Greenwood.